welcome to New York's number 2 sports show. The New York Giants beat the Cleveland Browns 21-15. And this game was the Malik Nabers show for the Giants, and he is already establishing himself as one of the premier wide receivers in the league. And in a year where, Marvin Harrison Jr. is obviously one of the most highly touted receivers coming out of college that we've seen in a while, Malik Nabers as well. And you really can't go wrong either way. And so as much as last season I wanted the Giants to have a higher draft pick, the blessing in disguise is the Giants land Malik Nabers, who really does seem like he's the goods. And this game really could have went in a number of different directions. And really the turning point, honestly, was 7-0 Browns. It looks as if Daniel Jones has sort of an interception, and in fact he has. But the play at the end is called for unnecessary roughness on Greg Newsome, the defensive back. So, and was it the right call? Probably. He left his feet, but it had nothing to do with the actual interception. So a very fortunate thing there, because that game could have turned, that did turn the game. Literally in 2 plays, Cleveland's up 7-0 on an Eric Gray kickoff return fumble, recovered by the Browns, and then first play from scrimmage, Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper for a touchdown. So you're thinking, here we go again. But give the Giants credit, they are able to really do a nice job, especially in the first half. The biggest surprise for me was the offense. I did not think the Giants offense would have much success against this Browns defense, but they really were able to. Now, the second half was a different story. They got a little bit too conservative at times, and they really almost blew it. I mean, Cleveland, Deshaun Watson just is not very good. And, the stat line looks a lot better than the eye test for Watson. And I think if you're the Browns, I think you need to consider Jameis Winston at some point, because, this is a shell of his former self. The quarterback that we saw with the Houston Texans just is not there anymore. And I don't know if the off-the-field stuff has translated to just being a different player on the field, but, Daniel Jones in this game, for him as well, I feel like the stat line looks better than what I saw. But still, in terms of any thoughts of Jones being benched, we can put that to bed for a while now. I think with what he's done the last couple of weeks, I don't, let's say he weren't to play well the next couple of games, I don't think that would warrant it. I think, that conversation is kind of off the table for now. And Jones goes 24 for 34, 236 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Again, he does throw that interception, which was really a bad play, and he got lucky that the Browns were called for a penalty. And then also, there was a play later in the game, second half, I think it was fourth quarter, I believe it was, where just a very reckless sort of throw when he got pressured, and luckily for him, it wasn't intercepted. And I just think that Malik Nabers is really kind of the key to this whole thing. Jones, something, I don't know, in terms of Jones' running ability, that doesn't seem to quite be there like we've seen before. But Nabers just makes a world of difference for this team. And the offense runs through him. He goes for 8 catches, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So, whereas last week against the Commanders, definitely the numbers, kind of popped off the page a little bit more. This one is still very good, and he has 2 touchdowns this week. But it was very efficient, and some key plays at that. Big first down conversions, contested catches. The other thing with Jones is the deep ball is really not there at all. But Nabers is able to get open at times, and they're able to create space for him. Brian Daboll did a very nice job, I thought, in terms of the play calling in the first half, where they were finding Wan'Dale Robinson and using the running backs as well. Devin Singletary, rushing, not good. He had a 43-yard run at the end of the game, but besides that, the Giant running attack was really bottled up for the times they tried. But a lot of Wan'Dale, a lot of Devin Singletary, and so they did what they had to do. And the other thing, too, was Andrew Thomas struggled. We don't normally see that. Myles Garrett, who's injured, and that's the thing, too. Cleveland's dealing with a lot of injuries going into the game and during the game. Jack Conklin did not play. Jedrick Wills was hurt going in and during. So the Cleveland offensive line was completely beat up. Myles Garrett came into the game banged up, but he's just so impressive and really gave Andrew Thomas fits. But Daniel Jones was able to evade pressure. That was the good thing. Like it feels like he's just a tick off, but yet it's aware enough to kind of get out of there and avoid the sacks, because the sack disparity was big in this game. The Giants had 8 sacks compared to 2 sacks for the Browns. So that was big time. And again, like it's a combination of Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland offensive line just not being up to full strength. So, what does it mean for the Giants in the long run? I don't know. Obviously, it's good to get off the schneid and to finally get a win in a league where you look at the NFL and there are not that many teams left as I'm recording this that have no wins. And when the week is over, when week 3 is over, there might only be 1 or 2 teams that have 0 wins. So we'll talk Giants Cowboys, which is going to be a Thursday night game. That's the next game for the Giants, and we'll preview that one. I'm not so bullish on the Giants' chances of winning that game, and I'll discuss kind of why. But this is not a game that I'm terribly surprised to see the Giants win. I don't know. It feels like in recent years, like this would be one that they would find a way to do after some damage is done, right? So they're 0-2. Season's not over by any means. And obviously, if they had lost this one, then you're really talking about a whole nother situation where it's like, okay, like it really feels like it's done. So it was a game they really had to win, and they find a way to win. But I also think that, Cleveland in some ways kind of gave it to the Giants in a little bit. But yeah, so as far as like some of the team statistics, you look at it, the Giants did pretty well in terms of time of possession, almost 34 minutes as far as time of possession. The Giants did take a lot of penalties. And when I think back to it, like it didn't really prove those penalties I don't think they proved to be particularly costly, but I might be forgetting a couple. Third down efficiency for both sides was 4 for 14, so not a whole big difference there. But total yards, 340 to 217. The Giants really were the better team. But at the same time, Cleveland, a bad fumble on an exchange from Watson and Jerome Ford, the running back for the Browns, where it's a 21-15 game, and Cleveland really was looking to take the lead. And if that doesn't happen, they may just have done that. So, not a great second half from the Giants, although I guess it kind of comes with the territory. And what was really big is what happens at the end of the first half. The fact that the Browns turned it over, because that was even though the turnovers were 2-2, and obviously the first one was 7 points that were just handed to the Browns in a lot of ways. The Cleveland turnovers were really costly as well. So let's get into it. I guess first I'll say the 8 sacks. Dexter Lawrence was a beast, as you'd expect. He had a good matchup. Dexter Lawrence, one of the best interior linemen in the game, and he had a couple of sacks. And then across the board, one for Jason Pinnock. Good job by Shane Bowen bringing the pressure, blitzing more, and they got home against Deshaun Watson. That was going to be key. So Pinnock gets a sack. Brian Burns gets one, and Burns was coming in with an injury, but he was good. This was the best that Brian Burns has looked. Elijah Chapman, the rookie UDFA, got a sack as well. And then half sacks for Okereke, McFadden, Nunez-Roches, and Thibodeau. And then I should also mention that Azeez Ojulari got a sack. So Azeez has actually been pretty noticeable. I kind of like what I've seen from him. If he can stay healthy, all of a sudden you're looking at an edge room that, like, between Burns, Thibodeau, and Ojulari, like, if they can play up to their abilities, that should be a strength. I think one of the things that hasn't been exploited yet to the fullest is the Giants' cornerbacks. I think Tay Banks and Cordell Flott, you look around the league, that's got to be some of the worst 1-2 punches at corner. And I don't know why Adoree Jackson isn't getting more run. Could be a number of reasons, but I would like to see him get a little bit more of an opportunity than Flott. And I understand that Flott was a third-round pick, someone that you kind of want to give a look to, but I think Adoree Jackson at this point probably is still giving you better production than Flott. So that's something to look to. And I think next week with the Cowboys, now, while they may not have a ridiculous amount of wide receiver depth beyond CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott is definitely a much better quarterback than, look, Sam Darnold, it's been a bit of a renaissance for him. Maybe renaissance is the wrong word. Maybe he's playing the best football that we've seen from him. But, Jaden Daniels, a rookie, Deshaun Watson, the Giants have not exactly played the best quarterbacks to this point, but it's going to definitely ramp up soon. So like I said, Eric Gray with the fumble off the opening kickoff. Also, just as far as some other roster notes, Greg Joseph, who missed a kick pretty badly, and I think the Giants are probably going to have to circulate between kickers because Graham Gano went on IR with that hamstring pull, so he's out at least 4 weeks. And they decided to go with Joseph instead of elevating McIntyre from the practice squad. So clearly they don't think that highly of him. But maybe he'll get his chance at some point because Joseph didn't exactly impress in this one. As far as anything else, the Giants are relatively healthy. I mean, Nick McLeod continues to be out, and he'll, just because of the lack of depth in the corner room, I think like he'll probably help a little bit. But besides that, like I said, and I think coming out of this game, I don't think the Giants really had too many injuries. Like for example, Michael McFadden left for a moment, but I think he came back. But yeah, the Giants have not been totally killed by the injury bug. But it starts off with Eric Gray fumbling. And just Eric Gray being like your kick returner isn't great in general, just because I don't think he's got the most explosion to begin with. And now you're talking about fumbles, and that's just not good for a player that, I don't know. I'm not the biggest Eric Gray fan. And then first play, Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, you see he is so impressive at being able to make these catches along the sideline. It is not even though Cooper is getting up there in age a bit, still is able to produce. And when the ball was thrown his way, he made the most of it. And what was actually kind of big was the final play, the fourth down that kind of ended it for Cleveland. Cooper got hurt the play before, and he wasn't out there, which really hurt them. But Cooper gets the 24-yard touchdown against Tate Banks. Again, Banks coverage, it's not bad. I just think that there's a little bit of room for improvement. And I still think he's more of a cornerback 2 in his second year than a cornerback 1, which is kind of the way that he's been treated and playing. Giants on the first drive go 3 and out. So it couldn't be a better start for Cleveland. Although then the Browns, they get the ball back and they don't do too much with it. You get a sack by Dexter Lawrence to end the drive. And then this is, again, the real key play for me is the first play of the Giant drive, which ends up being a 13-play, 81-yard drive. It was Daniel Jones throwing an interception by Hickman, and it was intended for Theo Johnson. Jones was facing a little bit of pressure, kind of panicked a little bit. It was just an awful throw, and he got lucky. I mean, the roughing the passer on Newsome, again, Newsome, a cornerback coming in on the cornerback blitz, he needs to kind of hold up there just a little bit and not go high. And that really, if that doesn't happen, I really, really think that the Browns are winning that football game. But so it goes. The drive continues, and you do get a key 4th and 1 on sort of an end around sort of play to Malik Nabers to give the Giants a first down. Then a really big 20-yard pass on a 2nd and 16 from Jones to Wan'Dale Robinson gets into Cleveland territory. And then Tyrone Tracy for 12 yards on a pass from Daniel Jones. So they were actually – so what was happening, these penalties, they were taking holding penalties, but it wasn't affecting them. The Giant offense, even in bad down and distances, were getting themselves in good positions against the Browns defense. And ultimately what happens, Jones to Singletary for 23 yards to the Cleveland 4, and then Singletary finishes it off with a 1-yard touchdown run to tie it up at 7. Then Cleveland goes 3 and out, including a couple of sacks, one split by McFadden and Ojulari, the other by Elijah Chapman. So at this point, momentum is definitely turning to the Giants' direction. We go to the second quarter. Giants do go 3 and out, including Daniel Jones got sacked on one of the plays. Then Cleveland moves the ball a little bit, and eventually there's a what kills the drive is there was a false start by the Browns and an intentional grounding by Deshaun Watson. So Cleveland punts, and the Giants put together a really nice drive, a 14-play, 93-yard drive, which featured a lot of Devin Singletary, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Malik Nabers. And Robinson gets a first down on a 3rd and 2 at the 15. Tyrone Tracy was involved. And I think Tyrone Tracy's got promise. I think that this is someone that has a future in this league. He hasn't exactly wowed in the regular season so far, but I've just been impressed by some of the things that I've seen. Malik Nabers with a 14-yard catch on a 3rd and 5, a 28-yard reception. I think this was the play Not a great throw by Daniel Jones, and Nabers is kind of able to grab it out of the Browns defender's hands and stay in bounds. A really just impressive, freakish catch by Malik Nabers. And then eventually on a 3rd and goal at the 3 with 1:44 left in the half, Jones finds Nabers for a 3-yard touchdown to give the Giants a 14-7 lead. Here was a big sequence. Cleveland has 4th and 1 at the 39, of their own 39. And they actually do get the first down. It's a QB sneak by Jameis Winston. We'll get back to the QB sneak, Jameis Winston stuff in a little bit. But then the next play, it ends up almost hurting Cleveland, because Cleveland goes for it, which I did agree with in that moment, to kind of change momentum, and it was only 4th and 1. But then the next play, Deshaun Watson, and this is a problem for him, and reasons why the Browns lose for this exact thing that happens is Brian Burns sacks Deshaun Watson, strips, and it's recovered by Elijah Chapman. So that's an impact play by Burns. And not only does Cleveland turn the ball over, the Giants end up getting a touchdown. They only get the ball back with about 30 seconds left at the Cleveland 30. But what happens? It's Malik Nabers for 12 yards, Tyrone Tracy for 5, Daniel Jones runs for 8, and ultimately, after a false start by Jermaine Illuminor, Myles Garrett has a defensive offside, which kind of nullifies the situation. And then it's Jones to Nabers again for a touchdown, 5 yards, gives the Giants a 21-7 lead going into the second half. That was so critical in this game. It really was, because you went from a situation where maybe Cleveland cuts it to 14-10, something like that, maybe even more, but probably not. There wasn't that much time left. And instead, the Giants, not only did they pick up 3 points, they get 7. And so now Cleveland has a much tougher hill to climb. So in the second half begins, Cleveland goes 3 and out. But then the Giants fumble. The second half, the Giants were really looking to kind of give this game away at multiple points. And it's another fumble for Devin Singletary. So that's 2 weeks in a row. So as much as Singletary, I like what he's provided. Look, he's not like anything crazy, but I think that he's been good. But the fumbles, just that can't happen. Like, for a player like him, he's got to be shorthanded. And he fumbles, so gives the ball back to Cleveland, and they don't take advantage of it at all. They actually do not score any points. It ends up being a missed field goal, and they look good. It was 1st and 10 at the Giant 30 after a Deshaun Watson scramble for 13 yards, but he gets sacked by Jason Pinnock, which moves the field goal back, and Dustin Hopkins misses a 53-yard field goal. So it stays 21-7. Giants offense, though, there's not a whole lot to speak of, and yeah, just an ugly sort of drive where there were some false starts. There even was a Daniel Jones fumble, which he recovered. Just not a good drive at all. But the Cleveland offense, they couldn't do much themselves. They were moving a little bit. They got a few first downs. But ultimately, they get about to midfield, and they have to punt it away. So the Giants get the ball starting at their 5. They are able to get a couple of first downs. Or maybe was it just one? No, it was 2, actually. And they punt it. So it's kind of a punting affair, back and forth, to the point where we get to the 4th quarter. And finally, what kind of changes things is that the Giants go 3 and out after the ball starts at their 9. So Cleveland gets the ball actually at midfield. So good starting field position. And they eventually are able to break through. And it would be Jerome Ford with a nice 12-yard run after a Micah McFadden missed tackle. Deshaun Watson's able to scramble for 14 yards. Jerry Jeudy, 12-yard catch. And then it ends with Watson to Cooper, 6-yard touchdown. Cooper versus Banks with really no help, which we've seen that too often so far against Justin Jefferson. That happened in week 1. That's not great, and it's easy for the offense to pick that apart. And then Cleveland goes for 2, which was interesting, and they actually get it. Watson to Jeudy, 21-15. 11:30 left. At this point, Cleveland is looking like they could definitely come back, and to make things even better for them, the Giants, after getting the Giants go 3 and out. The Giants go 3 and out after a holding penalty by Daniel Bellinger kind of made that happen because Jones had a run, but that took that away. And so Cleveland gets the ball back. And then what really killed them, really killed them, was because you get Watson to Cooper for 23 yards. The ball's at midfield. And on a 1st and 10, eventually 1st and 10 at the Giant 44, a bad snap exchange between Watson and Ford, and it's a fumble recovered by Azeez Ojulari. I mean, that was gigantic when you think about it. 7:45 left, 1st down in Giant territory, and just like that, it's turned over. But the Giant offense is unable to do anything with it. There was a 1st down, but then a few incomplete passes and the Giants punted away. Cleveland gets the ball back, and they don't really do much with it either. This was ridiculous. 3rd and 1, they bring in Jameis Winston, who is the QB sneak guy, so it was obvious they were doing it. Giants stop him. And then 4th and 1, Deshaun Watson is unable to get the yard as he was trying to kind of find his way. So that was just completely awful by the Browns. I mean, but the Giants are still not able to take advantage of it. So the Giants get the ball at the Cleveland 29, only needing a field goal to just basically seal this thing up. And they are unable to do so as they lose yards. And a very conservative game plan by Brian Daboll at this point. 3 Devin Singletary runs, which ultimately lead to -1 yard. So it's a 48-yard field for Greg Joseph to seal it, and he misses it. It wasn't even close. Wide right. And so Cleveland has another life. Both teams just trying to, the Giants trying to keep Cleveland in it, and Cleveland, really trying to just hand it to the Giants. And ultimately, the Browns, what hurts them is Amari Cooper gets injured on a 3rd down play, and he's unable to come in on the 4th and 4. And it's Watson to Tillman, incomplete. A pass that probably should have been caught by Tillman. Banks was near him, but it still probably should have been executed. And then the Giants get the ball back. The game's pretty much over at this point, but Singletary does a smart play. It's a 43-yard run, and he goes down at the 1. So it was a 1st and 10 at the Cleveland 44. Browns have no timeouts left, and the Giants would have won even if Singletary scored, but still, it was a wise move because it really ensured the victory. Then Daniel Jones takes 3 knees, and the Giants win 21-15. So the Giants improve to 1-2. They get their first win of the season, and now they will go home to take on the division rival Dallas Cowboys. And Dallas is coming off of 2 losses. So Dallas wins week 1. A road game at Cleveland, ironically enough, but then at home they get killed by New Orleans, and then they lose. They were getting killed by Baltimore, but they were able to come back, and the comeback falls short. So it's the Cowboys 1-2, the Giants 1-2, and just based off recent history, the Cowboys have won in this spot many a times in these primetime games, whether it be Dallas. More recently, it seems like a lot of the primetime games between these two teams has been at MetLife Stadium. So I just don't feel great about it based on what we've seen. And a lot of these games have not even been that close, where the Giants are kind of maybe coming, in a best case scenario, trailing. But look, history is one thing. And so it's not always wise to go there. I think it's more to do with the fact that the Cowboys are coming off of a couple of losses, and really games where they basically got killed, except for kind of a late push against the Ravens. It was pretty ugly. And so, look, both teams are going to be hungry for the win. I just think now you're facing a much better quarterback. I'm not saying Dak Prescott is anything absolutely amazing, but he is a lot better than the quarterbacks that they have faced. So it is just a step up in competition, and I wonder how the Giants defense will be able to handle that. Maybe there is some confidence. And look, Malik Nabers is a handful. I expect Malik Nabers on most games to really make an impact and make a big difference. He is a star in the making. And it's exciting, and it's important because the Giants really have not. I know Saquon Barkley, but it's different with a running back. You haven't seen this since Odell, and the Giants are able to work him into the offense. Daboll, this was a good game for him for the most part. Not everything was great. The second half especially wasn't, but really between Daboll and some of the play calling, especially in that second quarter, and then Shane Bowen dialing up the blitz, really putting the pressure on Deshaun Watson, a well-coached game for the Giants, which was good to see. I think they deserve a lot of credit, putting the team in a position to succeed. So the Giants go to Cleveland. They win their first game of the season. They are now 1-2, and now a quick turnaround as Week 4 approaches with a Thursday night game at MetLife Stadium against the Dallas Cowboys.